It seems like in the world today, commitments don't mean the same thing that they used to. They falter, people break promises, we find ourselves navigating the treacherous waters of fidelity and commitment. Um, and when it comes to relationships, like it gets really bad really quick in a lot of people's lives. And it doesn't really matter if you go to church or you don't go to church. It seems like marriage is under attack, commitment to someone is under attack. I don't know if it's because the world seems to be so disposable, fast food, instant gratification kind of style, but we live in a world where, unfortunately, like cheating is a normal part of life. I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying it's okay. I'm not saying it's honoring God. I'm just saying humanity's normalized it. Like if you look at celebrities, man, so many people, they look at celebrities and they look at athletes and they try to model their lives after them because those are the, I don't know, that's the royalty of America. And like that, like how many spouses can a person even have? And it's like as soon as something doesn't work out, I just throw it away and start over again. And so this idea of adultery, it's more than just a physical like encounter, like I mean in Exodus, it's one of the big 10, right? It's one of the 10 commandments. Exodus 20 verse 14, you should not commit adultery. And so this isn't just about a warning, but it's about building a resilient and enduring connection. So when God gives the ancient ancients this word of don't commit adultery, what the antithesis of that is, or the read between the lines of that is to love your spouse deeply, to care for them, to put everything you can into that marriage so that it grows. According to the Journal of Psychology and Christianity, up to 65% of husbands and 55% of wives will commit adultery. So that American statistic done by Christian psychologists. And that doesn't mean in the church necessarily, but my experience has been that just because you attend church doesn't make you safe from these things. Now, I'm not saying all this to scare you or to make you uncomfortable, but statistics they're startling, and the hope of avoiding this pitfall isn't enough. A hope isn't a strategy. That we need to have a strategy to make sure that our marriages are strong and capable of withstanding the storms that life throws at us. However, since this series that we're in right now is called Bad Advice from Pastor Eric, let me give you real quickly 3 easy steps to how to wreck your marriage and commit adultery. And then we'll spend some time going a little bit deeper in the antithesis of that and really talk about how to save your marriage, how to protect your marriage. But if you tuned in today and you were like, I wonder how I could really just screw up my marriage and scar my children and break the emotional bond between my spouse and I, then let me give them to you really quick. The first one is neglect your marriage. So neglect your marriage. Make everything else more important than your spouse. And so whether that is, hanging out with the boys or brunching with the girls or, like just scrolling on Instagram or video games or sporting events or whatever it is, just make that, a higher priority than your spouse. And then, you get bonus points if you could do something that's like, quote, good, and you could put it in the name of God. So like serving at your church or volunteering or being on the PTA, like anything that you can do to prioritize anyone else over your marriage. Never go on vacation with each other, never spend time together. In fact, go on separate vacations, spend time apart. And then what will happen is you'll be on your way to the temptation that comes, to 65% and 55% of men and women. And that is when that temptation is given into, it gives birth to the affair, right? And then that affair grows up and it destroys a marriage, it destroys a family. But if that's what you're looking for, this is how you do it. Number 2, if you want to commit adultery, if you want to wreck your marriage, if you want to destroy your family, this is how you do it. Start to intentionally seek common interests and emotional support from someone else. I used to say from the opposite sex, but gosh, man, the world we live in now, it doesn't really matter. Instead of seeking common interest and emotional support from your spouse, just find somebody else to, seek that hope and that love and that affirmation from, and just don't look to your spouse for that. Number 3, if you want to have an adulterous affair, wreck your life and your marriage and your children, and just kind of burn everybody down, then anytime that you are doing something that makes the other one unhappy, just rationalize and excuse your actions. Bonus points if you can gaslight them and make them feel crazy for even questioning you about it, because that'll definitely ruin your marriage really, really quick. And so let me just review the 3 steps of how to have an affair and wreck your marriage. Neglect your marriage. Put everything and everyone ahead of your spouse. Find someone besides your spouse for emotional support and develop common interests, like deep, meaningful interests with that person. And then make sure that anytime you get called on the carpet for misbehaving, that you can figure out a way to make and rationalize and make the person that is questioning you feel stupid, little, small, dumb. And pretty much you'll get there. You'll wreck your marriage, you'll wreck your life, and it'll be a beautiful disaster that you've created, and that you won't be able to solve. You won't be able to fix, But if you want to avoid all of that, if you want to avoid committing adultery, if you want to avoid wrecking your life, if you want to avoid, hurting your spouse, then maybe I could give you some good advice today. Yeah. I know the series is, bad advice from Pastor Eric, but let me give you some good advice, especially on this topic. If you want to have a powerful marriage and a powerful relationship with your spouse, then what you need to do is radically reduce the risk that is in your life. Now, what do I mean by this? You need to be careful in the way you live and the way you live your life. In Proverbs 5:8, Proverbs is a book of wisdom, the author, he's talking about how to be careful when there's an unvirtuous woman, and you could invert that and make it like an unvirtuous man, because hoes be hoeing, right? Like male or female, you need to be careful around people whose intentionality is to take you. And so, Mr. Steal your girl, Miss I could have your man anytime I want to. Those are not the kind of people that you want in your life. In this verse, the preceding verse is from 5:8. The father is advising the son to pay attention and to have wisdom and discretion to avoid being ensnared by the charms of an immoral woman. And he says, that it's an abomination. Avoid even being in the vicinity or the opportunity that might lead to moral compromise, and to take a proactive stance in avoiding those situations and that might jeopardize your fidelity, your commitment. And there's easy ways to do this. If you travel a lot for work, then do the best that you can to separate yourself from the other people. Maybe it means that you don't go out to the trivia night when everybody's traveling and drink with the people in the office, because 1 turns to 2, 2 turns to 4, and 4 turns to fornication. You don't want that to happen. And so maybe for you that's not off the table. You have to be careful. I do something when I wake up in the morning when I'm traveling and Jennifer's not with me. The first thing I do is call her. I normally will walk to go get a coffee somewhere, and then I'll call her. So I get up early, I walk to get coffee, and then I call her. And then before I go to bed that night, no matter how late it is or no matter how early it is or even the time change, we have a commitment to one another that we talk to each other. And again, I'm not worried and she's not worried that I'm going to have an affair when I'm out of town. But I know that if I put her in the center, the first thing I think about when I get up and the last thing I think about when I go to bed, then the bookend is going to protect me emotionally, spiritually. It's going to be a covering for me throughout my day. I do the same thing when I have a counseling session with a woman. I do it in a public place. I'll do it if I'm in a church office, then I'll make sure the door is open. If someone pops in, they need to speak with me, and there's somebody that of the opposite sex, then I will call. I'll go real quickly. I'll go, hey, hold on really quick. Let me call my wife and let her know what time I'm coming home, and I'm like, hey babe, I'm here with so and so. And so if I've did that to you, it's not because I think you're an unvirtuous person, but it's just practicing good like boundaries and protecting myself from anything that might even be the appearance of impropriety. Matthew 5:28 says like this, I tell you that anyone who looks on a woman lustfully has already committed adultery in his or her heart. So, like Jesus is saying, I know you've heard it said, and he does a series of these. I know you heard it said not to commit adultery, but I tell you if you even looked on a woman in lust. And so let's get down to the nitty gritty and talk about this. Whether it's virtual or in person, if you find yourself where you're not able to control your thought life because of the images that you're looking at, now whether that's actual pornography or if you're just looking at a catalog or a woman that's dressed inappropriate or a TV show with simulated sex acts and you can't control your thought life, when you look at someone lustfully, Jesus says that you've already committed adultery in your heart. Pornography is often it fuels and magnifies the kind of lust and it fosters a mindset that objectifies the opposite sex. It distorts our perception of relationships. It distorts our perception of sex. It distorts our perception of what a woman or even a man should actually look like. The people often that are in pornographic films and in imagery aren't authentic or real looking human beings, heavily cosmetically altered, or like the guys that are in pornography, like most guys don't actually look like that. There's not a lot of dad bods. There's not a lot of real women. There's just like a false sense of what it looks like, and even the idea that a sexual encounter is going to be that way, that it's predicted or projected, or let's be honest. I know maybe you didn't come to church today to talk about this, but like, we're talking about an industry that is famous for faking everything all the way down to climax, right? So none of that is real, and none of that is authentic, and none of that is really going to happen in real life the way that you're seeing it. And so what you're doing by consuming pornographic material is you're just objectifying individuals, and you're promoting a detached, unrealistic view of intimacy. And so even those people who say, well, it's okay that my wife and I watch pornography together, my husband and I watch pornography together because it's in our bedroom and it's what we do. I'm telling you it's not. I'm telling you that doesn't align with the teachings of Scripture, and that you're cultivating a mindset that prioritizes instant gratification over genuine relationships. And so if pornography is a part of your life, a little or a lot, then what you're doing is you're keeping your relationship from Christ from growing to the extent that it needs to grow. And you're allowing, in this sense, virtually the wrong people in your life. And so, I want your relationship with Jesus to grow. So when I say you never should be with the wrong kind of people, I mean in person and virtually, right? That you should never talk bad about your spouse to other people. Now, again, this is not, I'm not saying when you talk bad about your spouse to your mom, then you're going to wind up having an affair. But why talk bad to your spouse to your mom anyway? But most of the time I'm talking about the opposite sex when I'm talking about this. Don't use your friend at work or the person at the restaurant or the coffee shop or the bar that asks you how you're doing to tell you what a mess your marriage is or what a mess your husband is. In fact, sometimes in home groups, this happens. Men and women, they get together, and in the name of prayer request, a home group can quickly become I hate my husband, my wife is a nag groups. Instead of growing closer in our relationship with God, it's a group where we don't seek to get closer in our relationship with God and others, but it's just a place where we can be nasty and catty and rude about our husband or our wife, and we used phrases like old lady and dirtbag to describe them when that's not who they are and what we really feel. But we get trapped in these areas. So my advice for you is to just never talk bad about your spouse. And so if you need to have someone to vent to about your spouse, then go see a therapist. That's a safe place to have an environment where you can talk bad about your spouse and it not lead to anything negative or bad. And then surround yourself with people that have strong marriages. You know, like you hear me say this all the time. If you want to go lose weight, you don't just go get fatter friends so you can feel better about yourself. You got to actually do the hard work of exercising and nutrition. And so if you want to have a strong marriage, you don't go like you don't want to be the strongest marriage in the room. Just like you don't want to be the smartest person in the room. If you're the smartest person in the room, in the wrong room. Seek out older couples. Seek out people who are ahead of you on the journey and ask them questions and join a couples life group maybe and model your life after that sort of people. Ask those people if you can buy them dinner, buy them coffee, and how did you do it, and how did you make it, and what's the secret to your success, right? And then, avoid inappropriate places and situations, why would you ever be in a hotel room with someone of the opposite sex that isn't your spouse? Why would you go on I'll call it a date, even though you could call it a meetup with someone that might lead to that? Why would you allow yourself to develop a crush on someone that you work with and then insist on going on a business trip with them? Like, you don't want to do that. You want to invest in your marriage passionately, so that your marriage flourishes and grows. Proverbs 5:18-19 says it like this: May your fountain be blessed. May you rejoice in the wife of your youth, a loving doe, a graceful deer. He goes even further in Proverbs, says, may her breast satisfy you always. May you ever be intoxicated by her love, the love of your wife. That word intoxicated in the ancient text means captivated, captured, consumed, ravished. And so, like, when you invest in your marriage, as you age and your wife ages, the visual stimuli, the beauty that is your spouse, that becomes your standard of beauty. That becomes your everything. And it's when you allow those other things to come in, those other false ideas that aren't real, that are these curated plastic versions of humanity, that it'll actually erode the intimacy of your marriage. And number 3, if you're taking notes, if you really want to save your marriage, if you really want to prevent bad things from happening and infidelity from happening, then you have to avoid, the potential destruction that is around all the time in every corner, right? And so when you look at Proverbs 5, verses 3 and 4, rewind just a couple of verses from the last one. He says, the lips of an adulterous woman drip like honey. The speech is smoother than oil, but at the end she's bitter as gall, sharp as a double-edged sword. Her feet go down to death. Her steps lead straight to the grave. And so you could substitute that word woman for man. Obviously, the people that are writing this are men, and so they're saying if you want to be true to your wife, then don't surround yourself with dangerous women. But the same is true. If your husband isn't attentive, the answer is not finding another guy at work and making him your work husband, or a girl at work and making her your work wife. You only have one husband and one wife. I don't even like that phrase. It drives me crazy. Like, it's not my work wife. It's just a person I work with. My wife is my wife. And, here's the deal, right? The illusion that is painted, and whether it's pornography or movies or whatever, that the person that you're cheating with is going to fall in love with you and marry you. There's country songs written about it, right? If you want a man that's going to take the ring off of his hand and then turn around and tell you that he's going to be true, then you deserve that, right? In other words, he cheated to get with you. What makes you think he's going to be true to you? If your marriage was started, your relationship was started on lies, then that foundation isn't strong. And in fact, statistically speaking, only 3% of people actually marry that forbidden lover, right? The person they were having an affair with. And the percentage of those marriages that end in divorce, those forbidden lover marriages, that 3%, is 75%. So 75% of that 3% end in divorce. And then what are the odds of that marriage lasting? Now, literally, we're talking statistically here. It's 0.075%. That is such a minuscule number, it's not even worth quantitatively talking about. But there's good news, right? There's good news. It's God's good news. Is that even when we've been unfaithful, God is still faithful. He's still in the business of restoring broken relationships. He's still in the business of healing families. He's still in the business of bringing us back to the place where healing can happen. And maybe you have had an affair, or maybe your marriage has been on the edge, and maybe you haven't went all the way, but you guys have been fighting and life has been falling apart. You've been entertaining the idea of allowing other people to be emotional support, and maybe you even had emotional affairs. It hasn't been physical, but it's been emotional. That God can heal that and God can turn you back around. 2 Timothy 2:13 says that if we are faithless, God will always remain faithful. So I want to challenge you. I want to challenge you to invest in your current marriage relationship. I want to challenge you to have some fervor and some passion and invest in that you would normally put in the other aspects of your life, and put that back into the center of your marriage, and commit to nurturing and cherishing and safeguarding your relationships. Remember, the choices that we make today, they have this ripple effect through eternity, and it's not just you and your spouse that you're dealing with, but it's your kids and it's your other family members and it's other people that are going to be hurt. And so we can choose paths of strength and fidelity, or we can succumb to those fleeting temptations. I would rather be faithful. In fact, that's my prayer for us. Heavenly Father, in this moment, I pray that you would help us to try to grasp the essence of faithfulness and commitment. Lord, may our everyday actions align with the truths that we've heard from your word. Strengthen our marriages and our relationships as we invest passionately in them. Lord, grant us wisdom to navigate the hard times, the pitfalls, the tough stuff, and guide us in this endeavor to have beautiful marriages that people can look to. Let us grow old and love each other deeper and deeper as we age. Lord, let our marriages become even more powerful and more wonderful than they were when we first fell in love. In your name we pray. Amen.